محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
If we may begin by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in honor of Sayyida Rabab, mother of Ali Asgar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت كبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال مولانا الإمام حسن بن علي المجتبى صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. اللهم صل على محمد. لا يوم كيومك يا أبا عبد الله. صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
شهداء معصومين عليهم السلام بلندتر صلوات.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. مولا خشنودی مولا عباس سلمدار علیہ السلام بی بی سکینہ سلام اللہ علیہ مولا حسین علیہ السلام بی بی زینب سلام اللہ علیہ بآواز بلند نعرہ صلوات. مولا خشنودی امام زمان علیہ السلام بآواز بلند صلوات.
Ashura is that day of unmatched grief and pain. Ashura is that day where the tides and the waves in the oceans violently crashed between themselves out of remorse for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ashura is that day where the malaika came down from the heavens, beating their heads, covering in their wings in dust for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ashura is that day that the skies rained blood for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ashura is that day that the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began to tremble out of wrath. Ashura is that day where our 12th Imam weeps tears of blood. Iqra'u ziyarat nahiya. Recite ziyarat nahiya and you will see the pain that the Imam feels in his masa'ib. One part, a 12th Imam addresses his grandfather Sayyid al-Shuhada and he says, فَلَأَنْدُبَنَّكَ صَبَاحًا وَمَسَاءً وَلَأَبْكِيَنَّ لَكَ بَدَلَ الدُّمُوعِ دَمًا حَسْرَةً عَلَيْكَ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. Because the passage of time separated us. 12th Imam is speaking to Sayyid al-Shuhada. It says, because the passage of time has separated us and I was not there to be in Karbala with you, then I will mourn over you every morning and every evening and I shall weep tears of blood for you. You would think that the entire Muslim ummah that is centered around the love of Rasulullah would take the day of Ashura as a day of grief, as a day of solidarity towards the grandchildren of Rasulullah. But within the Muslim ummah, there exists a deviant and a satanic cult that wears the garbs or wears the robes of Muslims, but they are a manifestation and the breath of the devil himself. People who claim they are from the ummah of Rasulullah, but wallah, they have nothing to do with Rasulullah. And we used to see people like these in Sham, where on the eve of Ashura, as the lovers of Ali Muhammad from all sects would come towards the blessed shrine of Sayyida Zainab and would be indulged in commemorating the martyrdom, weeping and crying, you would see these people, or I saw these people year after year coming through Sayyida Zainab with their marriage convoys, having performed marriages on a night like the night of Ashura, beating their drums and celebrating through Sayyida Zainab. And it has transpired that this satanic cult is a worldwide network. They are not isolated pockets or isolated deviant beliefs that one or two people hold. These people exist here in our vicinity. It is with great grief and remorse that we have received news that the Grand Mosque in Leeds, United Kingdom, have organized on a night like this a celebratory or a celebration iftar. And they have advertised this event on their website saying that it is a festive commemoration, a happy commemoration to welcome the Hujjaj back from Hajj and to commemorate the beginning of the new Islamic year in happiness. Ajib. How many weekends have passed between today and from the time the Hujjaj came back from Mecca? There was no other weekend they could find to commemorate or to honor these Hujjaj except this weekend. How many more weekends are there to come for the remainder of the year? Aslan, the standards that they practice, these double standards, they come forward towards the lovers of Ali Muhammad and they say, weeping for Sayyid al-Shuhada or weeping for the grandson of Rasulullah is bid'ah. To commemorate the Mawlud of Rasulullah is bid'ah. Each and every commemoration where the remembrance of Ahlul Bayt is mentioned is bid'ah. But if you apply the same standard upon them, then is it not bid'ah by their own logic to hold a party for Hujjaj coming back from Mecca? When did we see Rasulullah hold parties and ceremonies and blowing of balloons and cakes for people who have come back from Hajj? Why this double standard? If it is applied against the Shias of Ali Muhammad, then they need to apply it on themselves. Number one. Number two, a group of the mu'mineen wrote towards the administration of the mosque, asking them or reminding them of the sorrow of the day of Ashura and the martyrdom of the grandson of their prophet, of our prophet collectively. And these people replied back by adding a comment on their website where they have advertised this event, saying that we have planned this family event for a long time, and this event is not to celebrate Ashura, but to celebrate the returning back of the Hujjaj, and it is by coincidence that this weekend fell on Ashura. Ajib. By coincidence, Rasulullah's grandson's death had to fall on this? What type of pathetic excuses are these? That by chance it happened to fall on Ashura and we didn't know. If you didn't know, you need to question your love and your affiliation with Rasulullah. Bouncing castles for the children and games for the children on a night like this when the children of Rasulullah are dying of thirst and hunger. They will distribute amongst themselves cakes and sweets as the grandson of Rasulullah's body lies on the plains of Karbala, covered in wounds in a pool of his own blood, without a kafan or a ghusl for 3 days. And they call themselves the Ummah of Rasulullah. The problem is that these Nawasib and these Wahhabis have come and hijacked the madhab of Islam, wearing the clothes of the Ahl Sunnah. When you look into the history of the Ahl Sunnah, they have always been a moderate sect that have always acknowledged the greatness of Ahlul Bayt. Have never resorted or retorted to calling the Shias kuffar because of their affiliation with Ahlul Bayt. But you have these satanic cults that come and create doubt and indoctrinate the moderate people from amongst the ummah of Rasulullah. This intolerance, this hatred in a developed country like this, the extent that one of the mu'mineen told me a few days back that even when they go to university to recite salah, within the university halls, these nawasib come and kick their turbas away. This level or intensity of indoctrination, of brainwashing the people, the youth at this age. What is their agenda? Why are they so persistent upon concealing the event of Karbala? Why are they so persistent in concealing the oppression that befell the family of Rasulullah? We need to mobilize ourselves at an individual level, at an organizational level, at an institutional level, to bring awareness to the Muslim Ummah and to Europe in general about the non-violent and peaceful message of Ahlul Bayt. We need to bring light to how the family of the Prophet was massacred. Now when we use words like mobilize and institutionalize these movements, it is clear that we are a school that believe in non-violence. We do not believe in coercion, abadan. But we need, or we have a duty to portray the truth for the people, for that the innocent people who have a chance of seeking guidance do not fall prey to them. Tabligh in this sense is our responsibility. For us to ensure that the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada remains alive, not only within our centers, but outside our centers, is a subject and a goal that should be given utmost importance. And this is a cause which each and every one of us can contribute to by using social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, everything. Every possible means that we have towards media, we need to use them to show the masses and the world the real picture of Ahlul Bayt. And we strongly condemn these celebrations that are happening at the Leeds Grand Mosque. And we hope that from amongst the moderate Muslims, the bodies that are put into place will approach the center and ask them to be mindful of the sanctity of this day, the sanctity of which is not only dear to the Shia, but should be dear to the entire Muslim Ummah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It is narrated that on a day like this, the 9th of Muharram, the day, Umar ibn Sa'ad al-La'in arranged his army and started to beat the war drums, moving towards the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada. At this time, as the horses started to gallop and they came closer towards the tent of the Imam, Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra went towards Sayyid al-Shuhada, who was in a state of prayer, and said to him, "My brother, why is it that we hear the horses of the enemies approaching our tents?" Sayyid al-Shuhada stands up and sees the army approaching towards them, the dust rising in the background. He asks his brother, Abul Fadil, to gather a contingency of 20 men and ride out from the camps to see what the army of Yazid wants. Abul Fadil puts on his battle gear. He mounts his horse with a contingency of 20 men. Narrations tell us Ali al-Akbar being part of them, Habib ibn Madahir being part of them, Zuhair ibn al-Kain and Muslim ibn Awsaja part of them. This contingency of the most bravest warriors the land of Arabia has ever seen march out to meet the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad. They meet at the center of the Maidan, or the center of what was then to be the battlefield. Abu al-Fadil asked them, what is it that you want from the family of Rasulullah? For Umar ibn Sa'ad says, call your master towards war, for indeed if he does not give allegiance to, the way they put it, Amirul Mu'mineen Yazid wal-La'in, then we engage you in war. For Abu al-Fadil, that personality who does not speak except through consultation of his Imam, returns back to Sayyid al-Shuhada and tells him, my master, these people have approached us, calling us to either give bay'ah to Yazid or engage them in battle. From what it seems apparent from the text of the traditions, that this was towards midday. For at that time, Sayyid al-Shuhada asks his brother Abu al-Fadil, he says, go to Ibn Sa'ad and ask them to give us respite for a single night, which is this night. Abu al-Fadil goes, conveys the message. Umar ibn Sa'ad scoffs and tells him, this respite of one night shall not benefit you in any way. They go back chanting their war slogans and beating their drums, waiting for the 10th of Muharram for the sun to rise, such that they may engage in shedding the blood of the family of Rasulullah. At this time, Abu al-Fadil comes back together with the contingency. They sit around the tents of Sayyid al-Shuhada, planning their tactics and strategy on how they are going to meet the enemies of God the next day. It is narrated that Sayyid al-Shuhada gathered the men around his tents, and he ordered for them to put their tents closer to one another, such that they may be easier to defend. And then he ordered Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, together with the other companions, to go out and dig a trench around the khaymas, around the tents, from the southern side, from the back side, lest the enemy, or such that the enemy cannot attack the tents of the women while the men are fighting from the front. It is narrated that with this scorching heat and this thirst, Abu al-Fadl went out with a number of companions and started to begin digging the trench. They dug the trench, and then they filled the trench with firewood, such that on the day of Ashura they would light these firewood, they would light these pieces or barks of tree on fire, such that it may act as a barrier for the enemies. There is a request if the brothers may kindly move forward, such that the people who are coming after you may have space to sit. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. For they dig the trench and they fill the barks of trees. They light them on fire on the day of Ashura, such that Shimr and his group may not attack the tents of the women, and it may be a natural barrier against the enemies, hence forcing them to face the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada from one direction. It is narrated that on a night like this, the Imam spent his entire night in a state of sujood, in a state of ruku', in a state of prayer, sometimes sitting and sharpening his dhul-fikar, and sometimes looking up to the skies, wondering what the day will hold for them. The intensity of his salah and the khushu', or the divinity or the holiness and the humbleness in his voice when he would recite the Quran. The Maqatil tell us that from the enemy camps, during the night when they passed around the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada and they heard him recite the Quran in such a melody and they saw the intensity of his ibadah. The Maqtal tells us that 32 men changed sides, left the army of Ibn Ziyad and came towards Sayyid al-Shuhada seeking repentance. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It was on a night like this that the traditions tell us that Abu al-Fadil did not close his eyes for the blink of an eye. He did not sleep for even a shortest period of time. The result or the job or the duty of Abu al-Fadil on a night like this was to circle around the camps of the women and circle around the camps of the companions to make sure that there is no one lying in ambush who would attack them at the back, holding his sword, guarding the women as they performed their supplications and their prayers. And then come the ashab and the ansar of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The Baqtal tells us that despite their hunger and despite their thirst, the companions sat together, sharpening their swords, talking about how they will attack the army, talking about how they are going to meet Rasulullah and shake his hand. It was on a night like this that the companions would stand up in prayer, would recite Quran, would encourage each other on how they will support and fight until the last drop of blood in defense of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ya Shia, tonight is our night to prove our loyalty to Sayyid al-Shuhada. Antum mu'minun. You have the nur of wilaya in your heart. Tonight when you stand up and form your lines for matam, stand and form your lines with the intention or as a gesture telling Sayyid al-Shuhada, if I was there, I would stand with Habib and Muslim to defend the camps of the women. On a night like this, when you stand together in your lines to do your matam, let this be a source of consolation for your 12th Imam. Your 12th Imam weeps that my grandfather was killed because he had no ansar. Let your attitude and your azar reflect your loyalty towards Ahlul Bayt and do not hold back on a night like this. Because it was on a night like this that Sayyida Zainab asked Aba Abdullah, she said, "Oh my brother Hussein, perhaps I'm worried that these people or the companions that we have may not desert us tomorrow." A companion called Nafi heard this and he heard the concerns of Sayyida Zainab. He went running towards Habib ibn Madahir saying, "Oh Habib, the daughter of Amirul Mu'mineen doubts our loyalty. What should we do to comfort them?" Habib gathers Muslim ibn Awsaja and John and all the companions. They come out with their swords unsheathed in front of the tents of Sayyida Zainab, saying out, "O daughter of Amirul Mu'mineen, here are our swords unsheathed. If you want, we give our lives for you right now." We need to register our names in this list of Ansar who were ready to give their lives for Sayyida Zainab. And the only way we can do it is through our tears and through our latam. For Ya Shia and Ahlul Bayt, do not hold back in your azar on a night like this. The traditions tell us Sayyid al-Shuhada went out during the night and surveyed the battlefield. He looked out for all the plateaus and the small hills that might be there to make sure that no one would ambush them out of surprise. When everything was checked and put into place and the trench was ready and was dug, Allah, Allah, the whiteness in the sky that marked Fajr began to appear over the skies of Karbala. Sayyid al-Shuhada completed his Salatul Layl. He looked up at the sky. The time of Fajr has come. The day of Musibah, the day of Bala. The traditions tell us that at this point Sayyid al-Shuhada gathered all his companions. They performed the tayammum. And how could they perform water when they have been thirsty for 3 days? The Maqtal tells us that they performed tayammum. Sayyid al-Shuhada himself gave the adhan. Sayyid al-Shuhada himself gave the iqama, and Ali al-Akbar gives the iqama and the adhan for the afternoon prayer. Allah, Sayyid al-Shuhada gives the adhan. The companions of Rasulullah, the companions of Imam al-Hussein stand behind him in a line. Allahu Akbar. The last takbir that a lot of these companions will perform under Sayyid al-Shuhada. They recite their fajr. They complete it. While Sayyid al-Shuhada has completed his Salatul Fajr, he lifts his hands to the skies in dua and he says, Ilahi, Ilahi, inta thikati fi kulli karbin, wa inta rajai fi kulli shiddatin, wa inta waliyun fi kulli amrin nazalabi. Sayyid al-Shuhada lifts his hands in dua and he says, Ya Allah, you are my only trust in times of difficulty. Ya Allah, you are my only hope in tribulations and trials. Ya Allah, you are my master in every affair that comes down. Sayyid al-Shuhada stands up from the salah, and it is narrated over here that a voice was heard from around the arsh, the highest level of the heavens, where Jibreel was heard to shout out at the time of Fajr after Sayyid al-Shuhada completed his dua, where it said, Irkabi ya khayl Allah. O horses of Allah, a metaphoric expression to refer towards the warriors of Allah. Jibreel says, Allah has given you permission, O warriors of Allah, to go out into battle. Allah, Allah, the Maqtal tells us that the companions put on their battle gears. Each one of them began to help the other wearing their armor. They stood outside their tents. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Sayyid al-Shuhada began to arrange the army according to a majority of the Maqatil. There were 72 companions, 42 of them on horse and 30 of them footmen. For Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Sayyid al-Shuhada arranged them such that there was a right wing which was headed by Zuhair ibn Kain, and then there was a left wing that was headed by Habib ibn Madahir, and then there was the center flank of the army that was held by the Bani Hashim. At the very front of the Bani Hashim was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas holding the banner of Islam. At this time, Umar ibn Sa'ad and Shima's army moves closer towards the Maidan, beating their war drums, chanting slogans of death and bloodshed. At this time, Sayyid al-Shuhada rides his camel and moves forward as his army is behind. The Maqtal tells us that he came down addressing the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad. Sayyid al-Shuhada gave 2 khutbahs on the day of Ashura. Ya Shia, now you are in Karbala and your hearts are with Sayyid al-Shuhada. You are standing amongst the Ansar and you are listening to Sayyid al-Shuhada in his khutbah, and you are watching what has transpired between them. Allah, Allah. The Maqtal tells us that Sayyid al-Shuhada stood in front of Umar ibn Sa'ad. To paraphrase his khutbah, Sayyid al-Shuhada says to the people, O army of Yazid, do not hasten in killing me. Think about who I am. Think about what you are doing and judge me with equity. Sayyid al-Shuhada tells them, am I not the son of Ali, the cousin and the successor of Rasulullah? Am I not the son, or am I not the nephew? Is not Hamza my uncle? Sayyid al-Shuhada in Uhud, is Ja'far ibn Tayyar not my uncle, the one who flies in the heavens with wings? If you have any doubt in my merits, then ask the companions from amongst you. There is Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari in Medina. There is Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Ask these companions who saw Rasulullah what my status is with Rasulullah. All of you, did you not hear the tradition? Did you not hear my grandfather say, Hassan wal Hussein Sayyidai Shabab Ahl al-Jannah? He looks at Qais ibn Sha'at, one of the commanders of the Kufan army, and says, "O Qais, aren't you the one who wrote to me a letter in Kufa before I sent Muslim bin Aqil? And you are the one in your letter who told me, O master, the time is ripe and we will support you and accept your leadership if you come to Kufa?" Ajib, the ones who wrote the letters against Sayyid al-Shuhada have now taken arms against him. Qais ibn Sha'at's face become red out of shyness and out of shame. Imam asked them, "For which crime have you put me under siege? Is there anyone from amongst you that I owe money, or anyone from amongst you I'm responsible for shedding their blood?" The army is in silence. Sayyid al-Shuhada returns back. Burair goes and gives a speech, khutbah. Zuhair goes and gives a khutbah. Still to no effect. At the end, there was one person by the name of Abdullah ibn Hu'zah. The traditions tell us that as Imam finished his khutbah, he rode towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. There was a distance between the army of Imam and the army of Yazid. This person, Abdullah, started shouting, riding his horse from the back of the army, saying, "Where is Hussein? Oh Hussein, may Allah throw you into the fire of hell." Ajib, Sayyid al-Shuhada looked at him and he said, "Ya Allah, for the people who are on the truth, judge between me and him. Ya Allah, for you to show these people who is on the truth, hurl him into the fire of hell." The narrations tell us that the dua of Sayyid al-Shuhada was mustajab, because as Abdullah ibn Hu'zah started to ride his horse with the intention of attacking Sayyid al-Shuhada, he fell off his horse, but his leg was stuck to the stirrup. The horse continued to ride, because between the army of Sayyid al-Shuhada and the army of Imam al-Hussein, there were tree stumps that were cut to use in digging the trench. They said that the horse continued to run. This person has fallen off the horse. His leg is stuck to the horse, and the horse continued to run. This person ended up being dragged behind the horse, his head being hit on each and every tree, until the horse landed into the fire that was in the Khandak, and the person landed into the hellfire. A miracle through the istijab of the dua of Sayyid al-Shuhada, so as to awaken the people from their sleep. Know who you are fighting against. The traditions tell us that at this time, a number of people from the army of Shimr, when they saw this, ran away from the battlefield. Aslan did not want to do anything. The traditions tell us then one other la'in, Muhammad ibn Ash'at, came forward to Imam Hussein and he said, "Oh Hussein, Aslan, you have no relationship with Rasulullah. You just want to deceive us on your proximity and your blood relationship with Rasulullah." Sayyid al-Shuhada looked up to the heavens and he said, "Ya Allah, this person negates or disbelieves the fact that I'm related to your Prophet. Ya Allah, hurl him into the fire of hell." The Maqtal tells us that Muhammad ibn Ash'at, after Sayyid al-Shuhada did this dua on him, Muhammad ibn Ash'at went at the back of the army to relieve himself. While he was in a state of relieving himself, a scorpion came and bit him right under his thigh, and he died in his own najasa, his body exposed. Humiliation in the dunya and in the akhirah for opposing Sayyid al-Shuhada. In either way, the traditions tell us that Umar ibn Sa'ad went forward and he asked for an arrow, and he took this arrow, saying to the army, "O army, bear witness for me and testify for me to Yazid that I was the first person to attack the camp of Hussein." The Maqtal tells us that the war began when Umar ibn Sa'ad shot an arrow that pierced one of the khayma, or one of the tents of the women of Ahlul Bayt. At this time, Sayyid al-Shuhada said to them, "Have patience, O my companions, and the next we will meet is in heaven in companionship with my father and my grandfather. Allah, the greatest jihad between haq and batil begins." The army of Ibn Sa'ad rides in their forces of 30,000 against this band of 72 companions. The Maqtal tells us that there is a big clash. The sands of Karbala have filled the air. No one can see anything except the neighing of horses, and they can only hear the hooves of the horses and the clashes of swords and the screaming of men. At the end, the army of Ibn Ziyad is not able to penetrate through the army of Hussein, so they are made to retreat. The Maqtal tells us when the army of Ibn Ziyad retreated and the sands came back down, Sayyid al-Shuhada saw that from this first attack, 50 of his companions are killed. Ajib, 50 companions have been killed. At this time, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas comes back with Sayyid al-Shuhada. They reorganize the army because at this point now, there are only 22 men. They need to make sure that there are an equal number of horses on the right wing together with the left wing, as the Bani Hashim hold the center wing. The Maqtal tells us that Amr ibn Hujjaj came and tried to attack the army of Sayyid al-Shuhada from the right wing. But on the right wing, there were people like Zuhair ibn Kain, and there were people like Muslim ibn Awsaja. As a contingency of 1,000 people attacked the right side of the army. The Maqtal tells us that the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada bent down on their knees and they held their spears diagonally to make sure that the horses cannot pass through them. And this is how they stopped the onslaught, because every time the horses would ride forward, they would pierce their spears into them. This way the army of Ibn Ziyad was not able to come close towards the tents of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The left wing has held himself. Amr ibn Hujjaj says that the left wing is not penetratable. So he says, let us attack them from the right wing. When they come towards the right wing, then the archers from the left wing and the swordsmen of Bani Hashim from the center wing started to shoot arrows at them. This way the army of Shimr was not able to come close, and the tents of the women of Sayyid al-Shuhada was safe. Until one time they came and they attacked again with a bigger contingency from the right and from the left, killing a number of the companions. Again, for a third time, the army of Ibn Ziyad retreats. From here, Sayyid al-Shuhada keeps sending his companions into duels where they fight in numbers of 2s and 3s or one-on-one duels until the time of Salatul Dhuhr comes in. Allah, the time of Zawal has set in. Sayyid al-Shuhada asks Ali al-Akbar to recite the adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is the last adhan that Ali Akbar will give in the dunya. Ajib. The Maqtal tells us that Sayyid al-Shuhada gathered his men. Sa'id and Zuhair ibn Kain stood in front of him. Sayyid al-Shuhada lifted his hands for Takbiratul Ihram. Allahu Akbar. They recited the Salatul Khawf. As soon as they finished, Zuhair ibn Kain fell down to the ground. His chest is covered with arrows. For every time Sayyid al-Shuhada would pray and would go into ruku or sujood, Zuhair would stand in front of him receiving the arrows on his chest. As soon as the Imam completed his salam, Zuhair fell down. His last words to Sayyid al-Shuhada was, Mawlaya, did I do enough for you? The traditions tell us that once the Ashab and the Ansar of Sayyid al-Shuhada were killed, the Bani Hashim went in. From the Bani Hashim, Ali al-Akbar was one of the first ones to be martyred, and then they went out in singles. Sometimes if they were younger children, they would go out in 2s and 3s until everybody was killed, including Abbas, and there remained no one in the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada from the adults except him and Imam al-Sajjad. Allah. At one time, the Maqtal tells us that Sayyid al-Shuhada sat around him. He would go into the tent of the Shuhada and he would sit between the corpse of Qasim and Ali al-Akbar. Sometimes he would look at Qasim and weep. Sometimes he would look at Ali Akbar and he would weep. And he would say, oh my son, wa walada, wa ibn akha. He says, oh my nephew, oh my son, what a day has come upon your father. Ajib, the enemies are shouting from the corners, chanting and mocking and taunting Sayyid al-Shuhada, threatening him that they are going to attack the women in his camp. Sayyid al-Shuhada is by himself. The Maqtal tells us this time he went into the Maidan and he stood amongst the dead bodies of his companions and he said, Ya Ansar Allah, ma lakum unadikum wa la tujibuni. He says, oh companions, oh Ansar of Allah, what is wrong with you? I call out to you and you don't respond to me. He
said, Kumu min nawmatikum. He says to his companions, wake up from your sleep. Oh Habib, where are you? Oh Zuhair, where are you? And then the Maktal tells us that at one time, he looked towards the Furat and he cried out, my brother Abbas. He cried out, he said, my brother Abbas, the enemies want to attack our tents. Where are you, Abbas? Did you not promise me that you would stay with me and make sure that you defend me till the last? Abbas, where are you? Ajib, it is as if the Maktal tells us that at this time the body of Abbas began to quiver. Sayyid al-Shuhada hears the weeping and the mourning of the women in the tents. He goes towards the tent and he consoles Sayyida Zainab. He consoles Kulthum and Ruqayya and Rabab and Sukayna. At this time, Allama Muhammad Mahdi al-Mazandarani tells us that Kulthum came with Ali al-Asgar towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. Kulthum comes and she tells him, Brother Hussein, this infant has had nothing to eat or drink for 3 days and the mother is not able to feed him. Ajib, the Maktal tells us that Ali al-Asgar was not crying, because for a baby to cry it must have energy, and this energy comes from nutrition. The Maktal tells us that Ali al-Asgar's eyes were sunk in because of hunger. He was struggling to remove voices from his dry throat. The Maktal tells us Sayyid al-Shuhada took Ali al-Asgar. He kissed him on his forehead. Kulthum said, perhaps they will feed him or give him water. The Maktal tells us Sayyid al-Shuhada removed his helmet. He removed his armor. He wore the amama of Rasulullah. He wore the abba of Rasulullah. The amama and the abba being clothes of peace and not the clothes of war. He took Ali al-Asgar in his chest and holding him in his arms, and he walked towards the battlefield. Hamid ibn Muslim says that I saw Hussein walk with his baby, and then I saw him address the left wing of the army. He says, I didn't hear what Hussein said, but I saw the left wing of the army weeping. And then Hussein went towards the right wing of the army. I didn't hear what he said to them, but I saw the right wing also started crying. Hamid says, then I thought, what is Hussein telling them? What is he showing them? So I went closer. When I went closer, I saw Hussein speaking to the center wing of the army, the central command of the army. And Imam Hussein said to them, lifting Ali Asgar, he said, Qataltum ikhwati wa awladi wa ashabi wa ma bakiya li shay'an illa hadha tifa. Sayyid al-Shuhada says, you people have killed my brothers, you have killed my companions, you have killed my sons. I don't have anyone remaining except this baby. If there was a sin for us, the adults, then what is the sin of this infant? The army went in to cry, Allah, Allah. Some of the people in the army began weeping. They were getting ready to bring out their water bags to feed the thirst or quench the thirst of Ali al-Asgar. Some within the army were persistent. The Maktal tells us that the army of Hussein or the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad began complaining and quarreling amongst themselves. And Shimr looked at Hurmala. Ya Shia, put your hands on your heart. Shimr tells Hurmala, quench the reason of quarreling, finish the reason for this quarreling in our army. For Hurmala looked at the chest of Imam al-Hussein. Ali al-Asgar or Abdullah al-Radi was wrapped in a very light cloth to protect him from the heat. So as Imam Hussein held him close to his chest, Hurmala says that I was wondering which part of the body should I shoot. He says at this time, a gentle wind blew across the plains of Karbala, and the cloth that was covering Ali Asgar flew up. He says that I saw a part of his neck. He says, I saw a part of his neck that was shining like silver. Hormala said, I have found the place that I want to shoot. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. Hormala puts the arrow onto the bow. Imam Hussein is looking at his son Ali Asgar. Hormala says that I took a three-pronged arrow. I took a three-pronged arrow and I took my aim and I saw that the neck of Abdullah al-Radhi or the neck of Ali Asgar is in target, is in distance. Hormala says that I stretched the bow at its maximum and I let go of this three-pronged arrow. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. The Maktal tells us that it was a three-pronged arrow. The first spike of the arrow pierced the neck of Ali Asgar, hitting one jugular vein, coming out from the other jugular vein. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. He says that the second spike of the arrow entered one ear of Ali Asgar and came out of the other ear. The Maktal tells us Sayyid al-Shuhada looked at Ali Asgar. At this time Ali Asgar, the Maktal tells us فَخَرَجَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِمَاتِ وَأَعْتَكَ أَبِيهِ Hussein. Ali Asgar removed his hands and he hugged the neck of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Allah, Allah, Sayyid al-Shuhada took the blood that was flowing out from the neck of Ali Asgar until it filled his hand. The Maktal tells us that Imam Hussein threw this blood into the skies. He looked at Allah and he looked towards the skies and he said, Allah, my only consolation is that you are witness over this. Ajib. Sayyid al-Shuhada walks towards the tent while the blood of Ali Asgar is flowing onto his chest and onto his clothes. I wonder, where is Imam Hussein going with this baby? Where is he walking to? For this reason or this thought might have come into the head of Imam Hussein. The Maktal tells us that Imam was walking towards the tent, then he stopped. He could not walk anymore. He takes a step forward, he takes a step back. He takes a step forward, he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He takes a step back. Imam Hussein doesn't have the courage. He says, وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Ya Allah, give my legs the strength to walk back towards the tent. Sayyid al-Shuhada takes a step forward and then he hears out a cry from the sky. It says, oh Hussein, let go of this baby. There is a nurse for him in Jannah. Allah, Allah, this nurse in Jannah is Zahra. I wonder how Zahra will take care of. Oh Hussein, your mother Zahra is going to put Ali Asgar to sleep. She will rock his cradle with one hand and she will put her other hand on her broken rib. Allah, Allah, the Maktal tells us Sayyid al-Shuhada walked towards his tent. Sayyida Zainab came running towards Imam Hussein. When she saw Ali Asgar with the arrow in his neck, she began to hit her head shouting, Wa musibata, wa hamzata, wa aliyah. Kulthum and Layla come running towards Sayyida Zainab. Do you know what Zainab says to the women? Zainab says to the women, go towards Layla. Don't let Layla come here.